Welcome back. Welcome back. Your man Dominic K in here, of course, the Dominic K Show, thedominicshow.com, on fire-tv.com. I'm glad to be here. And here today, episode 1418, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unpack. And, everybody's not going to like what I have to say. I mean, what else is new, right? What else is new? Because here, of course, on fire-tv.com, we've got to unpack the truth. Everybody wants the truth. Everybody deserves the truth. So sometimes these conversations, these monologues, my opinion, I'm going to have to give you the raw truth. And I'm not going to be vulgar. I'm not going to be, out of line, but I am going to talk about things. So, at issue in the review of every police shooting, whether it's during the day, whether it happened at night, whether it's an officer's first shooting or his third or her third, whether the person had a gun, whether the person had a knife, whether they were unarmed and had no weapon at all. One factor is at the root of things when there's a police shooting. Fear. Fear is at the root when we talk about a police shooting. We're going to get more into this, dive into fear. Police in total fear should get a new job. We're going to talk more about that on the Dominic K Show right after this. Stay tuned.
Visit onfiretv.com for live top stories, breaking news, and original shows.
So we're talking about fear. For officers to legally fire their weapon, the law says they must believe their life or another person's life is in danger. And of course, this fear must be reasonable. Must be reasonable. So now we have to define the nature, the meaning of reasonable fear. Reasonable fear has been stretched by police training and their schooling, and it usually focuses on the worst case scenarios. And of course, they overemphasize officer safety. Now, you may say, what do you mean overemphasize? That officer deserves to go back to their family? And you're absolutely right. The officer does deserve to go back to their family. And I hope that they do. But the definition of reasonable is subjective. Now, it appears to me that so many times when there's a weapon discharged, especially when the suspect was unarmed, the officers, they're so scared, they're such in fear. So they're quick to discharge the weapon because they are in fear when the person's unarmed. But when the person is actually armed, then that fear goes to another level, is it? I mean, reasonable fear. Talk about reasonable fear. If you're somebody who does a dangerous job, like being a police officer, firefighter, there's a certain amount of fear that is reasonable. Now, how you handle that fear, you attack it head on, I'm assuming. Now, I'm not in that line of work. I'm an entertainer. I'm a commentator. I'm a producer. So the fear that I often encounter is what they call stage fright. And the way to combat stage fright is to go through it, is to face it. And that's the same thing that is required when you're dealing with fear, like in the law enforcement, firefighter. Now, is it the same thing that's required? No. But stage fright is part of the job that I have chosen. And tackling fear is something that police officers must understand come with the territory. There are going to be situations that are dangerous, and you are trained to handle said situations. Reasonable fear. Reasonable fear. So, what is the excuse when an officer or officers with an S, plural officers, are in the worst case scenarios, right? What is the excuse then? When they are so fearful that they ignore their oath, ignore their training, ignore their duty to the public, and just cower in fear. What's the excuse then? That is exactly what happened Tuesday, May the 24th, 2022, when an 18-year-old, Salvador Ramos, walked into the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, and fatally shot 19 students and 2 teachers. Now, Ramos was eventually shot and killed by responding officers. Now, that's true. That happened, but questions have arisen regarding the police response at the scene. And I am here to tell you that it was driven by fear. We were talking about an elementary school with children. These officers were more fearful of their own lives when they are supposed to be protecting and serving the most vulnerable, the most innocent among us. Children, elementary school age children, 4th graders, and various ages for elementary school. So in the past few days, week, whatever, police have walked back many of the statements that they initially made. Many of them. They made initially some statements about what happened during the shooting. In fact, many of the things that police have claimed about the Uvalde shooting have been debunked because they were lies. So when we look at what happened in Uvalde and how many of the police statements have been debunked, proven to be false, and we're going to get into those, it makes me wonder and think about other times where police have made statements. How many other times have those statements been blatant lies? How many other times? Blatant lies. Oh, we're going to talk about it here on the Don McKay Show. You made Don McKay, theDonMcKayShow.com, onfire-tv.com. This independent machine is moving, is growing, and I definitely encourage you to support what we do here on onfire-tv.com. So during the press conference on Friday, May the 27th, the Texas Department of Safety Director Stephen McCray initially said that a teacher at the elementary school left a back door open, and that is how Ramos entered the school. Now, I guess Wednesday of this week, Travis Considine, Chief Communications Officer for the Texas Department of Public Safety, said that the teacher did close the door after learning there was a shooter nearby, but the door did not lock. And it's supposed to shut the door. It's supposed to automatically lock. So that was told to the Associated Press. Now, on the day after the school shooting incident, an official with the Texas Department of Public Safety said that Ramos was engaged by an armed school resource officer prior to entering the Robb Elementary School. A few days later, DPS, the Texas Department of Public Safety regional director, disputed those remarks, saying that Ramos walked in unobstructed initially. No one stopped him. No one confronted him. This is a big problem. Big problem. So from the grandmother's house to the ditch to the school, into the school, he was not confronted by anybody. But of course, they want to paint this picture like, he was, I don't know, confronted by one of their resource officers. Because I want to make sure you understand this. The first, the first action, that they're going to take is to try to make themselves look good. That's the first action. But in many times, it's a lie. Many times it is a lie, what they say. Now, we're talking about this shooting and fear and the way these officers handled said fear. A lot of problems with it. Usually this fear contributes to cops using deadly force. And it's usually when there is no weapon at all. But here we have an instance where there is an armed suspect. The officers are armed, but they are scared. 19 children and 2 teachers massacred. And these officers scared. A bunch of them. It was only one gunman, an 18-year-old. So we know that the school door was shut before the gunman walked in. Gunman was not confronted by a school officer, contrary to the original claim that an officer with the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District engaged the gunman before he entered the school. So the gunman was not confronted by any school police officer. This we know. One of the original lies that was told. And my thing is, there are many times where these officers lie, but they get away with it. There was no school resource officer stationed at the school on May the 24th. When the officer did arrive at the school, he inadvertently passed the shooter who was crouched down next to a car. And we're going to continue to go on and talk about some of these debunked lies that the police told to try to cover up for the fear that that overtook these so-called officers of the law. Your man Don McKay in here, of course, the DonMcKayShow.com, onfire-tv.com. I am here weekdays, 6 p.m. And before we go any further, the Flywire and TFP Entertainment presents the Flywire's 15th annual White Tie Affair, Baltimore's biggest and most celebrated event. When does it go down? Sunday, July the 24th, 2022, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. at Hammerjacks, the outdoor venue, 1300 Russell Street in Baltimore, 21230. After a 2-year wait, the party of the year returns with another exceptional, fun, and elegant red carpet cocktail reception. Music by DJ Kibi, DJ Tons, and Super DJ Big L. Tickets on sale now. Hammerjacks.com. For VIP tables, DM at the Flywire or at TFP Enter on Instagram. The attire is fly and sexy, all white outfit. Now, keep in mind, the venue is outdoors with a gravel courtyard. So, ladies, some shoe suggestions: sneakers, sandals, wedges, and flats, highly recommended. Heels, I don't know about that. You need to wear those at your own risk. The venue is outdoors and the ground is gravel. Heels is not the move. Early bird tickets, $40 plus fees. There are no refunds. Proper ID required, 21 and over. Again, tickets are on sale now. Hammerjacks.com. It is the Flywire 15th annual White Tie Affair. So we are back here, your man Don McKay, and we're talking about the fear of these officers. And how and why things went and go the way that they do. So the police said that they pinned down the gunman in a classroom. Later said that he was barricaded. Officers had immediately entered the school, engaged the active shooter, and continued to keep him pinned down in the location, meaning the adjoining classroom to the shooter had entered and opened fire in. Officers kept him pinned down in a room, so they said, until a tactical team could be put together. Finally, when that door was breached, officers engaged the shooter and killed him. What a lie. Oh, how the narrative has changed when the truth comes out, when the light shines through. What authorities are now saying is, rather than keeping the gunman pinned down, officials were unable to enter the classroom and stop the rampage, despite the lives at risk, despite the fact that there were kids, 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 in the room in danger. He said, McCraw said Friday that the commander on the scene said the situation had changed from an active shooter to a barricaded subject situation. And how did that happen? They always often talk about training, this training, that training. These officers knew better than this. Oh, if this had been an unarmed black man, they would have been shot him. But this is an armed person of color, okay? But nonetheless, they're scared of someone with a gun and scared to discharge weapons then. There were at least 19 officers on the scene about a half an hour after the gunman entered the school. In fact, there was plenty of officers to do whatever needed to be done. but they were too damn scared. They were too damn scared. That's why Border Patrol was requested on the scene. As soon as they were there, they executed, they searched, they released a dynamic entry and went in. McCraw says that the classroom doors locked from the inside and noted hundreds of rounds were pumped into this 4 minutes near those two classrooms. Any firing afterwards was sporadic, and it was at the door. So the belief is that there may not be anyone living anymore, and that the subject is now trying to keep law enforcement at bay or entice them to come in. I mean, there's so much wrong with this. So much wrong. So let's talk about the lapse of time, because that has been something that has been unclear initially. They tried to lay this out like they just went in, boom, did their thing, killed the shooter, and bada bing, bada boom, right? That is not what happened. The shooter was in the school for 40 minutes to an hour before the classroom he was in was breached. So that was what they said originally. The shooter was in the school from 40 minutes to an hour before the classroom he was in was breached. Now, what the officers and the authorities are now saying is that the gunman was in the school for over an hour before he was taken down. Over an hour with all of these officers, all of this carnage, all of this murder, death. As part of the original claim, officers also said that after shooting his grandmother in her home, the shooter got into a car and crashed near a funeral home across the street from the school at 11:28 a.m. He then entered the west side of the school at 11:40, followed by local and school police 4 minutes later. The timeline is one thing that I really have a problem with, as many folks do. There was, a further clarification. McCraw said that the shooter actually entered the school at 11:33, earlier than previously stated, and started shooting in the room of 111 or 112. These are the room numbers, firing off more than 100 rounds based on audio evidence. At 11:35, at least 3 Uvalde Police Department officers followed him into the school through the same door. By 12:03 p.m., there were as many as 19 officers in the hallway. The classroom was breached at 12:50 p.m. using keys from the janitor. And the janitor's keys is probably the reason why the door didn't lock once shut initially, but we'll get to that. The gunman was shot about 80 minutes after he entered the school. There was another claim originally that the shooter had worn body armor. The shooter was wearing the type of vest that tactical teams wear. Okay. Now, this is another thing that's been reported online. We've heard folks talk about, especially on social media, that responding officers rescued their own children. So when asked Friday if any of the officers had rescued their own children from the school, McCraw said, "Not that I'm aware of, no." And when he said that, the way he chose to answer that showed me reason to doubt him. So the authorities now are saying that it is not clear if any of the on-duty officers pulled their own children from the school. But it is being reported now that Jacob Alvarado told the Today Show on NBC that he had helped rescue his daughter, Jada, a second grader at Robb Elementary School. He is an off-duty Customs and Border Protection agent, right? So he was off duty and he rescued his child. So we know that if he rescued his, there were others that rescued theirs. Said that he ran into the school after receiving a text from his wife, who's a fourth grade teacher, saying that there's an active shooter. Help, love you. He helped clear out classrooms and evacuate students to safety. In the chaos, he found his daughter, a moment he called a big relief. Right? But fear is what drives most of these officers to take the steps that they do. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with more of the Dom McKay Show after this.
Visit onfiretv.com for live top stories, breaking news, and original shows.
And we are back. Your man Dom McKay in here, the DomMcKayShow.com, onfire-tv.com. So we've been talking about fear and some of the responses versus the reality. And, you know, McCraw said on Friday, with the benefit of hindsight, from where I'm sitting now, of course, it was not the right decision. It was the wrong decision. There were plenty of officers to do what needed to be done, with one exception, and that is the incident commander inside believed he needed more equipment and more officers to do a tactical breach at that time. So there's been so much talk about Pete Arredondo, Pete Arredondo. That's the one who gave the order, the bad order, the wrong order, causing officers to wait over an hour to engage Ramos. Parents were upset, community's upset, the nation is upset. The massacre at Robb Elementary School last week has scarred this nation. And adding to the tragedy was this stream of inconsistent facts, changing narratives, altering timelines presented by law enforcement. These officers of the law are supposed to have the trust of the American public. They're supposed to. And yet we have this situation. And while we are still dissecting this situation, a gunman kills 4 at an Oklahoma medical building. Just, this Tulsa gunman bought an AR-15 style rifle hours before using it to kill his former doctor. So he killed his former doctor. This is a whole nother case. Tulsa Police Chief Wendell Franklin said that the shooter blamed the doctor for his pain. The doctor, Preston Phillips, was killed in the attack. Gunman kills 4 people yesterday. Targeted a doctor who treated him. And the officials say that Michael Luis was armed with a rifle, which he purchased at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, and a handgun when he went into St. Francis Hospital Shortly before 5 p.m., he opened fire inside of the Natalie building, killing Dr. Preston Phillips and Dr. Stephanie Hussein, the receptionist, Amanda Glenn, and a patient, William Love. Unbelievable. The shooter was released May the 24th and repeatedly complained of being in pain in the days afterward. The shooter was a patient of Phillips and underwent back surgery on May the 19th. The shooter blamed Phillips for his pain. So there was ongoing pain and discomfort following the surgery, and of course he blames the doctor. Shooting began around 4:52 p.m. on the second floor of the 5-story building. A doctor was on video call with someone and told the person to call 911 to report shots fired. Police received the first report at 4:53 and were on the scene 3 minutes later. Franklin said that the shooter parked in the parking garage and entered through the second floor door. As soon as he walked in, he began firing at anyone who was in his way. Shooter died from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound as officers were making their way to the second floor. Either before the chaos or during, the shooter called his wife, who alerted authorities. Franklin and Phillips were found dead in the examination room. Other people were wounded, but the hospital officials did not say how many or if it was from gunshots. Those who were wounded have been treated and released, according to the hospital. Vice President Harris addressed the shooting today and said that common sense gun safety laws need to be passed. No more excuses. Thoughts and prayers are important, but not enough. We need Congress to act, she said today. Of course, these shootings follow killings in Buffalo, Uvalde, and New Orleans. The span of violence that has hit U.S. cities over the Memorial Day weekend, leaving at least 156 people dead, 412 injured. From Friday, 5 p.m. to Tuesday, 5 a.m. And this is according to the preliminary count by the Gun Violence Archive. Things are out of control. Things are out of control. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, at The Diamond K Show. Of course, on fire-tv.com. Before we go, I've got to say this. For the last 16 years, the Baltimore Crown Awards has been connecting, developing, honoring, and promoting the Baltimore scene. So get your green clothes ready. That's either formal, semi-formal, or however you feel fly, because the 2022 Baltimore Crown Awards is an emerald party. The Baltimore scene is green. Now, the nomination process is happening right now. This is going to determine the actual nominees for the show. They need your input, so take a moment to visit thebaltimorescene.org. Tell them who should be honored at the 2022 ceremony. There are many great categories, from visual artist of the year to retail to makeup artist to movement of the year and many more. Let your voice be heard. The 16th annual Baltimore Crown Awards goes down Saturday, November the 19th at the Garage, 6 Lafayette Avenue in Baltimore, Maryland, 21202. This event will be hosted by Desi Alexander. Tickets are just $20. And for more information, like I said, visit thebaltimorescene.org or text Shinyer at 443 248-2596. It is the 2022 Baltimore Crown Awards. So a lot of things that we talked about today. And, in the wake of Uvalde, Tulsa, Buffalo, it is really a sad state of affairs where we are right now. And the fact that those on the right, the NRA, those people thinking that this is not a problem with the easy access to guns. Things are going to continue to go in this direction until we can get a handle on this. Now, you may agree with what I'm saying. You may disagree. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I love to have conversations about these very important issues. I will be back here tomorrow, 6 p.m. Anytime you want to catch up on any episodes of the Diamond K Show or anything with On Fire TV. You know where to find us, onfire-tv.com.
Visit onfiretv.com for live top stories, breaking news, and original shows.